We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
And what can we say? And here we are, yet again, trying to continue having a conversation, albeit a one-sided conversation. We're still trying to talk. Welcome to a new edition of Granite State Live. Great to have you along on this Tuesday evening, the 16th day of September, 2025. I'm your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative. And I'm going to exercise my First Amendment rights. And if need be, my Second Amendment rights. But we'll get into that here very shortly. Heavily armed, as always, never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity, because, kids, when the shit hits the fan, you don't want to call a feminist. And I don't apologize for that. I was born this way, and I will never apologize for my Christian faith. Ever. Our call-in number, if you'd like to be a part of tonight's program, toll-free 833-603-8255. That's 833-603-TALK. And if you'd like to jump on via video message, you're certainly welcome to do that as well. Just email granitestatelive@gmail.com. Put the words video link in the subject line, and the production team will get that link out to you lickety-split. Also, if you want to share your thoughts with us via email, good, bad, or indifferent, granitestatelive@gmail.com. That's granitestatelive@gmail.com. Just go ahead and please include your first name and the town that you are living in. So last Wednesday, I was in Indianapolis, just outside of Indianapolis, Plainfield, Indiana, at the Indiana State Police Academy, doing of all things, a law enforcement de-escalation program. Right around 12:25, 12:30, I started getting text messages, as did, I think, everybody that was in the room. There were about 50 people that were in that room. And the news came out, obviously what happened in Utah. And I saw the video. I think many people did see that video. I think there's a lot of people that didn't want to see that video. and I don't remember the politician who said this, but they described, actually, I think it was the governor of Utah, now that as I think about it, that described the internet as a cancer, and then went on to describe it further as the scourge, the plague equal to fentanyl. And I have to agree. Several of the chat groups that I happen to be in on Signal and the primarily Signal, some people that were passing that video around. And of course, my question was, why are you passing that video around? Well, to learn from it. Okay, well, unless you're a subject matter expert on crowd dynamics, threat assessment, and tactics, the only thing that you're doing by passing that video around is glorifying the absolute horrificness. And I think about, just as we opened up with Charlie's wife, Erica. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting both of them, Charlie on several occasions, Erica once. Did not meet their children. But my first thought was for her and those beautiful, beautiful babies. That now, someday, they will see video of their father's last moments on this earth. That Erica has to be subjected to that, knowing that that's out there. And then to make matters worse, you have people that are celebrating this, glorifying this, relishing this, reveling in the actions of what can only be described as a mentally deranged 22-year-old. Now, the internet sleuths are out there trying to figure out what happened. And there's just things that I have to say. I don't give a rat's ass that you listen to a true crime podcast. Stop trying to analyze things that you don't understand. And that's the thing about the internet. I agree, it is a cancer. It's a scourge like fentanyl. The problem with the internet is that it gives every asshole with an opinion an outlet. The best thing about the internet is it gives every asshole with an opinion an outlet. It's a double-edged sword. But clearly, at this level of our evolutionary process as a species, we have not learned how to handle something as complex as the internet. Now, it used to be where if you said something insulting to somebody, you'd get punched. And I'm not advocating for violence. But there was a certain level of etiquette and decorum that came with knowing that if you stepped out of line, somebody might take offense to it. Somebody might act upon that. And now every nameless, faceless, anonymous, degenerate scumbag with a hot internet connection can simply behave with immunity and impunity. And make no mistake about it, we crossed a threshold on Wednesday that I believe there is no turning back from. I started my broadcasting career at WGUF 98.9 FM in Naples, Florida. And from there, I've had the privilege of sitting behind many microphones, both local and nationally syndicated. And I remember saying, as a matter of fact, the first show opener that I had involved, the opening was set on a bed. It was a Pink Floyd song from the Division Bell that featured Stephen Hawking saying, "All we need to do is make sure we keep talking." And I remember saying that if we just have the courage to sit down and engage people in healthy dialogue, then we would be okay. As a species, as a people, as a society, we would be okay. And then we started to see something darker emerging. 2015, 2016, you started to see a period where people on the political left, they didn't want to have conversation. Now, one of the things that I've always based my media on is research, history, and ongoing lessons learned. And throughout my career, I have spoken often and heartily about the progressive movement in this country and the origins of the progressive movement, the postmodern movement that came out of the 1950s and early 1960s literary professors, primarily in Europe. In fact, many of the leftist philosophies and leftist battle cries that we hear today come directly from the postmodern movement. Postmodern movement, of course, primarily, as I said, being literary based. So professors interpreting, and you've heard leftists say, well, that's not my reality. And of course, the average person sitting back saying, well, how can this be? What do you mean it's not your reality? It's very easy to understand. When socio-political philosophies were derived from people who were teaching that the author didn't have meaning. It's subjectively what you interpret that literary work to be. So what is the interpretation of the word in the context of the sentence? What is the interpretation of the sentence in the context of the paragraph? And the paragraph in the context of the chapter, and the chapter in the context of the entire literary work. And it's open to interpretation because viewpoints and reality is in fact subjective. That you bring to the table your own unique experiences, your education, your viewpoints, and that shapes your reality. And your reality is no more, less, or more important or viable or real than anybody else's. And from that foundational principle comes this concept that if we discuss, we validate. And I want you to think about this. How many times have you heard somebody say, I'm not going to dignify that response with an answer, or I'm not going to dignify that statement with an answer? Because to dignify it, to respond to it, gives it life. It makes it manifest. It brings it into reality. It is now part of the philosophical landscape. And I predicted in 2016 there was going to come a time, and this was the danger zone. This is where that needle was getting solidly into the high pressure region, if you can forgive the metaphor. That at some point, the left would stop having conversations. And sure enough, during the 2016 presidential cycle, and I just referred to that period of time, it wasn't necessarily during or in terms of the candidates themselves, but certainly political candidates that were not vying for the highest office in the land were refusing to debate people. I started a timeline during my time at WNTK and WUVR on the morning show. In fact, people would come up to me jokingly and say, "How many days has it been?" Referring to how many days since I had first invited Ray Buckley to come on the program and have a conversation, a respectful conversation. Nope, not going to do that. Because to have that conversation is to make manifest and validate the other person's argument. And then we saw something else begin in 2015 and 2016. We started to see the dehumanization and the demonization of the opposite political party. And of course, I'm talking about the left in the context and their references to the right. There have been many of these montages But what I find most disturbing and most disgusting is the fact that there is immunity and impunity when it comes to the rhetoric, the violent rhetoric of the left. In 2018, there was a documentary that was produced and aired on Netflix. It was called Alt-Right, The Age of Rage, and it was an exploration into the alt-right, as was becoming a very popular term back then. Conservatism and republicanism was synonymous with white nationalism and racism. Going back, even before Obama, people would make fun of the term political correctness. You weren't short, you were vertically challenged. You weren't stupid, you were intellectually challenged. You weren't white, you were pigmentally challenged. You weren't dead, you were terminally disadvantaged. And people would make fun of the political correctness, the attitude of political correctness, the unwritten rules of political correctness. And I warned about this. Not just me, many other broadcasters warned about political correctness. As I had said many times, that political correctness sought to make uncomfortable the exercise of First Amendment rights, specifically the right to freedom of expression, the right to free speech. That you have a right to say something. But now you found yourself looking over your shoulder before you said something, lest you offended somebody's delicate sensitivities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, riddle me this. Where within the Bill of Rights does it say you have a constitutional right facilitated by the government to have your feelings protected? If you can find this anywhere in the Constitution, then please, by all means, GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. I would love to be schooled on this. The bottom line is that it isn't. It doesn't exist. Because you don't have a constitutional right to be protected by the government from harm befalling you, whether that's murder or having your feelings hurt. But political correctness plugs that hole. Because political correctness makes it uncomfortable to talk about things that may ruffle some feathers, that may create discomfort in people. In that documentary, social justice warrior, his term, not mine, Darrell Lamont Jenkins, opines, and he actually really does a good job of succinctly explaining what political correctness does. Juan, if you could play audio clip 112, please. This is Darrell Lamont Jenkins.
Sort of harm, people are allowed to respond.
Do we have that clip?
Hate speech is protected under the First Amendment, but that doesn't mean it's protected by ethics. It just simply means that they don't go to jail for it. But if what you say does cause some sort of harm, people are allowed to respond.
It's protected by the rules of ethics. Now, interestingly enough, this is something that I actually teach a lot when it comes to the use of force for armed professionals, law enforcement, security, investigators, military groups. And one of the questions that I ask all the time is, what is the difference between law or legal concepts and ethics? And basically, law, those are rules and regulations that are created and enforced by an administrative authority, a governmental body. Ethics are the moral principles that govern the behavior in society outside of what the government says you can and can't do. So one of the questions that I ask, can something be legal but be unethical? Can something be illegal but be ethical? The easiest way to understand this is look at a prison. The rules of the prison, those are the laws. But the code of conduct amongst the inmates, that's the ethics of that society, the ethical platform. Doesn't matter what the law of the prison says, you don't follow the ethics of the inmate code, most likely you get killed. And Daryl Lamont Jenkins does a great job of saying this, that hate speech is protected. But if you dare to say anything, and again, what is hate speech? It's a construct. If you really, 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 really like Macintosh apples, and I go on a rant about how terrible Macintosh apples are, they're flavorless, they're mealy, they've got a tough skin, it's those institutional apples that they would give kids as part of their school lunch, maybe you would construe that to be hate speech. We can certainly look at hate speech as it's coming out of Great Britain right now. People are being arrested because they're posting things on social media that's creating anxiety in people. Oh, merciful heavens! Maybe if you close the lid on the laptop and put the social media to bed and actually lived life in reality outside of a social media world, you'd be better off. But I digress. We are going to create a system and a society that makes it impossible for you to say what is on your mind. And to be honest with you, many conservatives found themselves on the business end of the doxing campaigns. Until now. Now suddenly people who felt it appropriate to celebrate the murder of a person for simply sharing their viewpoint are now finding themselves being suspended from their jobs, being terminated from their positions. And I got to be honest with you, I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic simply at a knee-jerk level, because what we are seeing right now, ladies and gentlemen, is the de-evolution of our society. As I said earlier, we crossed a threshold. And I don't see how this is going to get better. Necessarily, it would have to get worse. Now, what I find amazing as well is that Daryl Lamont Jenkins identifies and puts into words what political correctness does in the context of hate speech. And the left is very, very quick to analyze every single thing that comes out of any Republican, any conservative, any religious figure. It gets dissected, it gets analyzed, it gets interpreted, words get twisted, things are taken out of context, videos are selectively edited, excerpts are taken out of entire speeches, so that way their 10 seconds makes it look like a person says or did something that they did not do or did not say in the context of the accusation, or more appropriately, the context of the indictment. Juan, do you have the audio clip of the Mark Potok? I'm going to give you a second to find that. It's in the audio clips that I sent to you. Mark Potok is with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Mark Potok is responsible for the and I'm drawing a blank now on the name of it, but it's the Hate Watch group. Everybody, I gotta be honest with you, who does not fall in lockstep with the philosophies and the statements of the progressive left has been labeled by the Southern Poverty Law Center as a hate monger or a racist or a white nationalist, or insert whatever anti-conservative, anti-right-wing pejorative that you would like to put in there. Do we have that? Okay. This is Mark Potok. I want you to listen carefully. We're going to play this video or this audio clip twice. It's very short, but I want you to listen to the sentiments expressed by the organizer of the Hate Watch group from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which, by the way, has been supported by your tax dollars.
The idea that there's a substantial radical left in the United States is ridiculous. The claim that there is somehow some sort of equivalency, that, we've got this large radical right and an equally large and equally scary radical left, is simply not true. And I'm not denying historical realities. Look, in the 1960s, early 70s, there was a whole lot of left-wing real-life terrorism. But that's simply not true anymore.
Well, I thank you, at least, for having the intellectual honesty to bring up the Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn Weather Underground days of the 60s, when the radical progressive leftist movement was indeed violent. But this notion, this assertion that somehow, some way, that today's left is just this, hey, let's stick daisies in the barrel of the guys with gun concept is utterly ridiculous. And I think this is worth the juxtaposition. Juan, play that one more time, please. Listen very carefully to what Mark Potok is asserting in this audio clip.
The idea that there's a substantial radical left in the United States is ridiculous. The claim that there is somehow some sort of equivalency, that, we've got this large radical right and an equally large and equally scary radical left, is simply not true. And I'm not denying historical realities. Look, in the 1960s, early 70s, there was a whole lot of left-wing real-life terrorism. But that's simply not true anymore.
It's simply not true anymore. Let's go back to 2020. If you remember this clown, Keith Olbermann, he was summarily fired from MSNBC for, this guy is out there where the buses don't run. Do we have the Olbermann clip?
Plunged. The hate he has triggered, the Pandora's box he has opened, they will not be so easily destroyed. So, let us brace ourselves. The task is twofold. The terrorist Trump must be defeated, must be destroyed, must be devoured at the ballot box. And then he, and his enablers, and his supporters, and his collaborators, and the Mike Lees, and the William Barrs, and the Sean Hannitys, and the Mike Pences, and the Rudy Giulianis, and the Kyle Rittenhouses, and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society while we try to rebuild it and to rebuild the world Trump has nearly destroyed by turning it over to a virus. Remember it, even as we dream of a return to reality and safety and the country for which our forefathers died, that the fight is not just to win an election, but to win it by enough to chase, at least for a moment, Trump and the maggots off the stage, and then try to clean up what they left. Remember it, even though to remember it means remembering that the fight does not end November 3rd, but in many ways will only begin that day.
Now, you could certainly say that, you know what, that's just political commentary rhetoric. But there's two things in that clip that I think stand out. The first thing is his reference to a virus, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, was not, and this was October 19th of 2020 when this particular audio clip came out. This was not a reference to the coronavirus. The virus was the Republican Party. The virus was the MAGA movement. The virus that Olbermann so eloquently refers to are people that don't see or believe in what he stands for, what the progressive left stands for. And then you'll notice there was a double entendre that was in there, the maggots. Was speaking with another broadcaster earlier this week talking about this. And this is something that we have seen from the radical left. I mean, going back to the Obama days. If you study history, you will see a very clear pattern emerging. That forces that believe they are in a position of power and influence will resort to campaigns of dehumanization before they begin to exterminate. Think about the references from the National Socialist Democrat Party. That's the Nazi Party, kids, by the way. As it referred to the Jews. They were rats. They were subhuman. They were vermin. You're a maggot. You're subhuman. And these people, they want you dead. And we can talk about this. Oh, well, that's not really what we mean. Bullshit. They want you dead. And see, here's the beautiful thing about plausible deniability, ladies and gentlemen. I can say things that I know other people are going to act upon. Then I can sit back, as they are very well versed and experienced in doing, and say, well, that's not what I meant. You took my words out of context. In criminal investigations and law enforcement, there is a concept called totality of the circumstances. And I know I want to skip this commercial break because we don't need to play a public service announcement. This is something that needs to be addressed. So let's look at the totality of the circumstances. Let's take the challenge to identify the very undercurrent that Mark Potok from the Southern Poverty Law Center insists is simply a fabrication. This doesn't exist. This is just something that we're making up because evidently we like drama. So not in our words, but in their words. Let's see just exactly how loving and peaceful and misunderstood the radical, woke, progressive, leftist, Democrat movement in this country actually is. One, play that supercut if you would, please.
This means war. That is where we are. We are at war with these people. These folks are evil.
There is an ultra-right MAGA contingent in this country that wants to overthrow the U.S. government.
It is a danger to our democracy. It is a danger to our way of life.
The MAGA movement is a threat.
The extremists that we're dealing with every single day, we've got to kill and confront that movement.
Clearly, this is a literally call to arms.
Obviously, Republicans, I think, are the biggest threat to democracy. We don't separate right-wing extremists and Republican Party anymore.
I see this as a party, a MAGA party that no longer is confident that they can win elections with votes. And so now they're seeking to enact their political will through violence.
This is literally what conservative white folks do when they don't get their way. They turn violent.
Today's GOP is no longer a political movement. It is a fascist movement.
And this is why it could be more dangerous than 1860 or the 1930s.
Clearly, this is a literally call to arms.
Maybe now it is all about the violence. It all is about an insurrection. It all is, in his mind, about a civil war.
It feels like we are not just at the brink of a civil war, but that one has already begun.
The fact that the base is getting smaller, it makes it more dangerous in a lot of ways because those are the people who are willing to do things like take up arms and press the questions and tactics that lead to civil war.
This is someone who held that office who is basically saying to Americans there should be civil war.
Look at what he's doing last night, as you note, that more or less salutes that are either QAnon or almost look like Nazism.
You saw the rally in Ohio the other night. Trump is there ranting and raving for more than an hour, and you have these rows of young men with their arms raised.
These crazed, deranged folks who want to impart evil in every facet of our society.
Clearly, this is a literally call to arms.
This is literally a call to arms. Now, maybe you're one of the intelligent few who buys into the rhetoric that this is not actually a call to war. But when you have people, which, by the way, don't take my word for it, research this. Ever since going to a disease model in this country, 50% of our society has a diagnosed mental disorder or mental illness. So let's assume for a moment that even a quarter of those actually have the urge to go into any type of violent activity. Maybe they're influenced by what they see. Maybe they're influenced by their TikTok influencers. When a mentally deranged person who is desperate for attention hears this rhetoric that Donald Trump is Hitler, and anybody who believes or follows him is a Nazi, is a fascist, is evil, that political officials are calling for an act of war, that people have to be taken out, following with this campaign of dehumanization. What do you expect? What do you expect when somebody like 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who shares a home with his live-in transgendered partner, hears this rhetoric that the right only wants to kill transgendered people, that they're racist, that they're homophobic, that they're transphobic, that they're, again, insert whatever pejorative you want to. Is it any wonder that these useful idiots, and that's not my term, that's a Marxist term. That's a term that refers to the low IQ people who do not have critical thinking or analytic skills, who will go out and become the foot soldiers for the people who are calling the shots. Is it any wonder why things like what happened on Wednesday happen? That these people believe somehow, some way, that they are influencing positively society. We're not even getting into the people that are celebrating this. Right here in New Hampshire, Jason Osborne put out a tweet. If we could pull that up, please. Image 136, please. If we can get in on that. Any closer on that. It's kind of hard to read. I can't read that. It's pixelated on my screen. There we go. If we can scroll up, please. This is from Jason Osborne. To my 15-year-old son and every young man in America, you are all Charlie Kirk now. You have been conscripted to war. It may not be your choice, but is your opportunity. Be like Kirk, be bold and courageous, be kind and be gracious. Only you can save the Republic. Godspeed. Now, I believe that words have meaning. So I look at the word conscripted. What does the word conscripted actually mean? In the context of a battle, in the context of a military operation, in the context of war, it is involuntary servitude, if you want to call it that. Involuntary drafting. Here you go. Here's your rifle. Go. Is it unreasonable to look at what Mr. Osborne wrote and find fault with that? Or is that realistic? Because there is a war on right now. Not a war of bombs and bullets and bunkers and bayonets, but there is a war for the heart and soul, the conscience of this country. And Mr. Osborne directing that comment to 15-year-old kids, absolutely, because there is a war for the next generation of kids. Which, by the way, is why Charlie was taken out. Because Charlie Kirk represented what I believe to be the single largest existential threat to the leftist movement in this country. If you're not familiar with what the term trivium is, or if you don't know what the word trivium is, trivium refers to 3 of the 7 liberal arts. Those 3 specifically are grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And Charlie Kirk's trivium, his mastery of trivium, his demeanor, his love for every single person. I made a comment to a fellow broadcaster the other day. I believe Charlie Kirk was the closest thing that we had in our society to a Buddhist monk. I have never seen anybody as peaceful and anti-violent and let's exhaust every possible conceivable means of dialogue before we even consider for a moment turning the war of words into something physical. Charlie Kirk represented an existential threat to the left because his trivium, his logic, his grammar, and his rhetoric won the hearts and minds of people who had been thoroughly entrenched and steeped in leftist ideology since they were old enough to crawl. A generation that grew up in the Reid, Pelosi, Obama trifecta. And he did so by using logic. He did so by using rhetoric. He did so by using grammar. And he did so effectively that he needed to be silenced. All right, I have a lot more to say about this, but we do have a guest that we need to drive on here. So, okay, all right, and I get so caught up here, Drew. I appreciate your coming on. I know I've kept you there for a while. So you were a publicist for Charlie Kirk for quite a while, correct?
Yeah, but I did one of his books. His last book, it turned out to be last summer. So, it was about a month of work with him, more or less. What was interesting to me is that I didn't know Charlie personally, like I do a lot of other, frankly, famous people, and I don't mention that to pat myself on the back, but I mention that because when Charlie Kirk died, I didn't actually realize how important he was to this country. And I certainly didn't realize and understand how important he was to me. Keith, I've been, I'm not a crier, okay? I'm a Texan. That's where I grew up. I don't cry a lot. That's just how I am. And I've cried maybe 5 times in my life, and I couldn't tell you how many times I cried since Charlie died. And the reason is I'm 38 and I have 2 young daughters. One's 2.5 and the other one's 8 months old. Charlie had a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old and had a wife. And as I was with my family, all I could think about was his family and what was stolen from them.
Mm-hmm. The last thing that I got into here before I brought you on was the effectiveness of his. I just call it trivium. I mean that's literally what it is. His grammar, his logic, and his rhetoric were so finely tuned. And his demeanor, I got to be honest with you. Listen, I get triggered like every other human being, right? You piss me off, and you can see it in my face long before my voice changes, and my voice raises an octave, and I start waving my hands around, like an Italian trying to order a meatball sub. This guy could have some of the most intense discord, and he never lost his cool. And he could walk away and he could find the best in somebody. And it was it blows me away. And the reason why, and I firmly believe this, the reason why they had to take him out was because they recognized the power that he had over the 18 to 24 crowd that was supposed to be solidly progressive. They had grown up during most of their formative years were spent in the Obama era, and then of course in the Biden years they were being educated, and I'll put that in air fingers quotes, by leftist woke progressive teachers. These are 18 to 24-year-olds should not be out there voting for Trump. They should not be recognizing the sanctity of the family. They should not be out there celebrating Christianity and starting businesses. They should be embracing communism. They should be embracing socialism. They should be out there trying to elevate Bernie Sanders and AOC. But instead, they were solidly responsible for elevating Donald Trump into his second term in the White House.
And for the first time in history, or noted recent history, young men have now outpaced women in going to church and outpaced women in being conservative now. Young men are now officially more than not voting Republican and more than not, going to church and getting in touch with their faith.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, he was, spearheading the effort. He was right behind that, obviously. He was the most effective communicator we had in many ways, and he was only 31 years old, which is mind-blowing. I mean, this guy had a maturity that was beyond people twice his age. I mean, most people don't even get there. And I'll say a couple things, personally, out of this tragedy, I think that a lot more Charlie Kirks were created. I can speak personally. I've been doing this for a little while. Obviously, I'm a publicist. I've been on radio and TV for years, and mostly friendly environments. Now, I'm not tepid by any means. I talk on my own show and other shows, but Charlie was different because he would go into the lion's den, and he didn't reluctantly do it. Look, a lot of these politicians, especially on the Democrat side, because they're used to being insulated, they don't want to go into a debate, right? They want as few debates as possible. They want to cancel the debates because they don't want to have to go through that experience, and also because they can't really defend their arguments because the left's entire history is built on lies. And Charlie had an enthusiasm. There was a piece about him. And I am a Christian. I'm a Protestant. And as I've reflected on Charlie Kirk, I realized that, I want to be more like Charlie Kirk. I think most Americans, young men, especially, they want to be Charlie Kirk. And he gave a blueprint to how that could happen. And a strange thing happened to me. I mean, Charlie's death killed something in me, and that was this lingering little bit of fear that I had that would prevent me from approaching situations like Charlie. And it's seems surprising, I guess, but seeing the shocking and gruesome, video of him being assassinated, yes, it brought me to tears. Yes, seeing his family, seeing him now brings me to tears. But it actually eradicated my own fear. I'm not afraid, I mean, Charlie was truly a martyr, and I think that so many more people now are going to be watching him and listening to him. It's all out there on the internet, and taking lessons from him. And I think, in the end, I hate that it's this way. As a Christian, we know that God will always work in good ways and can bring the best out of the worst tragedies. But I do think that good will come from this, and it's because of the way Charlie lived his life.
I got to ask you, Drew, and I want to have one. I want you to play. This is a musical artist, and I'll put that in air fingers quotes again. Just absolutely disgusting. But I think this needs to be shown. Bob Vylan is his name, or Vylan, whatever. But anyway, video cut 119, Juan, if you would, please.
I want to dedicate this next one to an absolute piece of shit of a human being. The pronouns was, were. Cause if you chat shit, you will get banged. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, you piece of shit.
Not even American. Fuck that guy.
I know we're supposed to take the high road here, Drew. I know we're supposed to be like, yep, we got to keep the dialogue going. We have to rise above this. We can't sink to their level. Fuck that.
We are above them.
No.
You know what? No, I'm tired, because here's the thing. No. That's not what I mean. I'm not saying that we need to. I'm saying that we are above them, even if you say fuck that, fuck you. We're still above them because we're not out there assassinating people and committing acts of violence, domestic terrorism. I mean, look, listen to me. They are Al-Qaeda, okay? Let me be very clear. This is 25 years ago, we had 2001, right? September 11th, and I was a 14-year-old, and that shook my world because we realized we were no longer safe in the United States of America again, and we had to deal with some terrorist threat that I didn't even know existed. What is this Islam, radical jihad stuff? And that shaped the next 2 decades of my life. 25 years later, we have another episode of terrorism, but it's not Al-Qaeda, it's not radical Islam, it's radical Democrats, the radical left. That is terrorism in this country, and people should take note that there is little difference. They did it in the name of religion. Democrats and the left are doing it in the name of progressivism, but people should take note of that because a lot of these people, like Charlie Kirk's audiences and these young kids, they weren't even alive for 9/11. So 9/10 was their 9/11 in many ways. But the difference here, of course, is we had Steve Scalise, who was shot in 2017, right, at the congressional baseball field by a Bernie Sanders supporter. We had Rand Paul's ribs broken by his neighbor. That was an act of violence carried out because he was a Republican. We had 2 assassination attempts against Donald Trump. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And finally, the culmination is Charlie Kirk. So if we don't wake up now, I don't know when we're going to wake up.
But here's the problem, okay? When you don't disincentivize behavior, when you send a message either overtly or tacitly that you approve of something, you can expect it. And you can expect it in greater numbers. What do we do? Oh, we can't respond because we're above that. You know, I had a bully for 2 years in elementary school until I knocked him the fuck out. And you know what never happened? Nobody screwed with me ever again. And I learned a very, very valuable lesson that day. What you accept and what you tolerate, you can expect in larger numbers. And we act as though we give all of these people, we give them a blessing. And we do. We tacitly approve of this level of violence because we don't stand up for ourselves, because we are passive pussies. And I, for one, am sick and tired of watching the radical left literally sodomize every single movement that I hold dear. But we have to be nice about this. No, because you know what? The people who are actually skilled in violence, Drew, the people who actually know and who have seen that, have been silent, who have not acted, and they're tired. They're tired of getting pushed around because they know all it would take to stop this is a show of force on the side of the right. But we don't do that. We passively accept it. And I got to be honest with you, I believe it's the passive acceptance of this type of victimization that ultimately will create more Charlie Kirks because people don't stand their ground. You could disagree with me on this, and that's great. I mean, I'd love to have that dialogue. But I, for one, am fed up with this.
I find myself apoplectic. I think it's time to stop being aw shucks Republicans and start being fuck around and find out Republicans.
Sure. I mean, I think that sentiment's shared everywhere. Obviously, you know, I don't want to go on the street right now and start getting in gunfights. That's not where you're going anyway. I understand your point. You know, you punch the bully in the mouth. I mean, you know, this is a stacked thing because we're not talking about something. This passivity that you're talking about has existed in the Republican Party for a very, very, very long time. You know, it's Rhino. I mean, it's everything, but it's in our personal lives too. The left has no fear. I mean, a perfect example is the way Democrats live their lives. You know, I don't spend too much time on social media, but, you know, during COVID, for example, I remember I posted things, obviously, that were against the lockdowns and whatnot. I made the same comparisons that Gina Carano did. They got her fired, you know, comparing the climate to Nazi Germany. And for that, I had people that I hadn't even talked to who had been in the past been friends decided to message me, you know, fuck you, you're a piece of shit, we hate you. So this is what they think of us. This is what they're willing to do. They'll cut you out of their lives in a second. I lost all my childhood friends over voting for Trump in 2020. So there is a note that we need to take here because the way to deal with people, obviously, you know, strict just dialogue and kumbaya and debate isn't going to get the job done. But, the other problem is, we haven't had the cojones to talk like Charlie Kirk did a lot of people. I mean, he went out there all the time and he talked about transgenderism for what it was. And he effectively, preached the gospel, both the literal gospel and the gospel of Americanism. And I mean, what have we been doing while Democrats have taken over the education system for the past number of decades and allowed this festering poison to, get into the minds and souls of people? I mean, the fact that we live in a country that celebrates abortion, the fact that we live in a country that actually encourages 9-year-olds and younger to cut off their penises and to remove parents, and we sit here and just allow it to happen. I mean, this is a serious thing. When parents stood up against a lot of this stuff, famously in Loudoun County, the FBI and DOJ labeled them domestic terrorists. And so we've been persecuted for a very, very long time. And so, yeah, I think that Americans need to start thinking exactly how you're talking about and just have a mental shift. I mean, look, this country was founded a certain way. That's no secret. Our Declaration of Independence is not a separate, document that's no longer alive. It doesn't go away because of the Constitution that came later. The words in the Declaration are very specific. I mean, if that time comes, we know what the Declaration says. We've never had to risk and sacrifice for much of anything. And we are soft in society today. And, we're just a mist. 1776 was not that long ago, but in the grand scheme of our lives, it seems like a long time ago. And we are soft. So, I mean, I agree with that. It's just, I think that this type of conversation needs to happen in the air, though. It has to.
Go ahead, Julian.
I was going to say, I think it goes much deeper than that. I think Charlie Kirk had hit on multiple major things throughout his career in politics and throughout his voice becoming mainstream and nationwide, and I'd say even international. We have gotten to a point where even on the right, we excuse things within our own midst that we know to be wrong. We have excused the transgenderism within our own midst as long as they say the things we like. We have excused divorce. We have excused infidelity. We have excused promiscuity. We have excused so many things that we know have been degradations to society and not spoken up, because as long as it's on our side of the aisle, we're willing to give it a pass. And Charlie Kirk was not willing to give it a pass. And I think, more to your point, we need to start standing up and saying the things that need to be said, regardless of how anyone feels about them. Because the fact is, the data is in. It hasn't frickin' worked. This culture of unfettered validation and affirmation that we live in, as if the YOLO lifestyle that we've been preaching to society has not delivered results. It has delivered the degradation of society.
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly right. I mean, what I hope this would inspire at the minimum is that people talk like you do, which is like Charlie Kirk was talking about all the time. I mean, he was where we should have been, 20 years ago in the way we talked about this stuff. He always talked about a higher power. I mean, obviously the difference between us and the left is, whether they claim to be Christians or not, at the end of the day, they're faithful to the Democrat Party. They don't actually have standards. It's moral relativism for them. And we answer to a higher power. That's why we have order. That's why we have these different things. And, on occasions, it seems like a weakness to some extent, because the way the left uses it, straight out of, Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, is they, hold us to our moral standards, but they have none themselves. And so, yeah, that's why they say, if they bring a knife, we bring a gun. That's how they live their lives. But the minimum thing that we have failed to do is what you just said, which is, even in dialogue and conversation that we have, and our policies and the way we run for office, we always do bend the knee to some extent. Charlie Kirk, like you said, didn't do that. And the other thing, look, my faith is very important to me, like it was to Charlie Kirk. And ultimately, what the left has done too is they have bastardized Christianity. These people who don't believe in Christianity, don't believe in the Constitution, who want to destroy it, they want to then tell us what it means to control us. And so they call it hate speech when we say, hey, if you're 6 years old or even 13, you haven't even gone through puberty yet, you don't have a fully developed brain. If you want to, cut your penis off, your breast or whatever else, okay, I'm open-minded to that. We can't be. It's absolutely evil. It's amoral. You cannot become the opposite sex. There have to be moral absolutes that return, and that's what we need to see.
Drew, I know you, producer had mentioned that you had a hard out at top of the hour. Are you good on time, or do you have to take off?
Well, I can stick around about 5 more minutes with you guys. Okay. I mean, this is important.
All right. Because, I think you hit on something. The left holds us to their standards. I'm sorry. The left doesn't determine my morality. It doesn't determine my ethics. It doesn't determine my faith. And as far as I'm concerned, what the left has as a standard is not something that I even want to be in the same room as, because I know what the left stands for. The left stands for godless, communistic. I don't even know how to say this. They embody everything. I'll say it this way. I am proud to embody everything that the left hates. A Christian faith, belief in strong family, heterosexual marriage, going out and staking your own claim, not becoming a sponge, not suckling at the teat of government, not being a whore for government handouts. Everything that the left despises, I am. And you know what? I wake up every single morning thanking God and proud to be who I am and what I am. Because I would never, ever, ever want to meet up to the standards of a woke progressive leftist.
Me and Keith had a guest on, I don't know if you saw it a couple weeks ago, who said that the left reads the Constitution the way the atheist reads the Bible. It's not to understand, it's not to embody, it's not to live, it's not to practice, it's to force you to have to admit hypocrisy, but they don't understand the text of what they read.
Well, no, of course not. They cherry pick and they bastardize. I mean, at their convenience. I mean, they invent it as they go. But I don't know if what I said was misunderstood or not. I mean, my point is that we do have morals and values, and they don't. And so they try and hold us to those rules, right? They establish those rules and throw them back in our face, and then of course they never use them themselves. I mean, it's like you go into a football game, and they change them in the middle of the game, to benefit themselves. So I mean.
Your meaning wasn't lost. No, I completely understood.
Okay.
And I just want to, I mean, I don't give a rat's pajamas what the left happens to establish as a standard, because I'm certainly not going to abide by it. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm not going to allow it to become, bumpers or guardrails in how I live my life. And more to the point, I think Julian brought up a great point, which is the eisegesic versus exegesic interpretation of the Constitution. And it goes beyond just, governmental studies, historical understanding, and biblical interpretation. In fact, more to the point, I have a video clip. I want you to see this. This is Pastor John Howard Wesley from the Alfred Street Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. Juan, if you could play video cut 117, please.
Charlie Kirk did not deserve to be assassinated. But I'm overwhelmed seeing the flags of the United States of America at half-staff, calling this nation to honor and venerate a man who was an unapologetic racist and spent all of his life sowing seeds of division and hate into this land. And hearing people with selective rage who are mad about Charlie Kirk but didn't give a damn about Melissa Hortman and her husband when they were shot down in their home tell me I ought to have compassion for the death of a man who had no respect for my own life. I am sorry, but there's nowhere in Bible where we are taught to honor evil. And how you die does not redeem how you lived.
Your thoughts, Drew?
That's oh man. So, that's a political speech, obviously. This is a man who doesn't live by the word. I go to a Bible church. That was important to me as I was looking for a church. They're all flying the transgender LGBTQ plus flag outside. And I said, no, thanks. And I'm thankful that I found a church that we go by the Bible. This is actually, there's so many But the church is one of them. The reality is that, this is a Christian nation. If Christians actually upheld the standard of God, none of this stuff, for the most part, would be happening. We wouldn't have such evil proliferating. That church is an example of what's happening around the country. That's what's going on in the classrooms and elsewhere. It is absolute poison that's being preached from the pulpit. As I mentioned, all these churches that fly the pride flag and everything else, you're welcome. The Christian, being a Christian is actually a superpower. Charlie Kirk actually demonstrated that, because when you are a Christian and you fear nothing because you have God and Jesus Christ in your life, of course, there is nothing to fear, because this life is temporary, and actually what comes next is much, much better, of course. And too many Christians live in fear. Perfect example to start with, gay marriage. As a Christian, it is actually impossible for you, if you are living your life as an authentic Christian, to endorse gay marriage. Marriage is sacred. It's between a man and a woman. That was most of history, that's how people looked at it, and certainly in this country. And then all of a sudden, one day, the left scores a political win, notches a political win, and the Christian in this nation simply goes silent on the subject and accepts it. This is what happens time and time and time again. The roadblocks that protect this country are Christians. This country was founded on Christian ideals. The Bill of Rights is based on Christianity. Christianity was being preached from the pulpits, which directly informed the founding of this country. And as the Christian, so this is why, Charlie and others talked about this being a spiritual war. I firmly believe that. I've heard many people say that. This is good versus evil. And the Christian better stand up and exert himself. As a Christian, this nation's been stolen from us by, like you said, the left, the atheists, the communists, the Marxists, whatever else. We've seen this playbook in other countries throughout the world. And our greatest defense is the Christian in this country. And the Christian is, in many ways, nowhere to be found, or otherwise they're found in a church like that, which is preaching. You heard it. The audience heard it.
Well, I want to throw this out there, because I spoke at Faith and Freedom in 2022, and I had said this to a large room full of pastors at the time. The reason we are in this place where we are in this country, where we have so many people who don't believe and so many people who bastardize the word of God, is because we got safe proselytizing to each other within our four walls, rather than being out on the streets talking to the sinners the way Jesus Christ had commanded that we do. And the reason why you have men like that Baptist preacher able to say the things that he does, is because we've gotten to a point in society where truth is no longer the moniker. And the only thing I want to challenge in what you said is that progressivism, Marxism as a whole, is a religion. It is religion. When you are a true Marxist, you are a Marxist first and foremost, and everything else comes after that fact.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. I agree with you. It is a religion. It is a religion. When you put the pride flag up at a school, but you can't have the Bill of Rights, and you say, Christianity can't be here, the Bible can't be here, Judaism can't be here, but you put up, transgenderism. You're right. That 100%, it's a religion. That's correct. That's how we should be talking about it. Actually, I agree.
I also want to propose this in text, in law, under the Treaty of Tripoli. We are not a Christian nation. However, the soul of this nation is a Christian nation, and the founders were very explicit about that. That in text, we are not a Christian nation, as in using the force of government to enforce Christian doctrine. However, they were very explicit about the soul of this nation being a Christian nation. And that's something I think was a duty on us, to be active in our communities as stewards of our communities in order to enforce that soul of the nation.
Yeah, we're not a theocracy, of course.
Yeah.
All right, Drew Allen, actor, author. I want to talk to you really quickly about your book. What is the next book about?
It's called Clinton Hoax, Obama Coup. So it's taken all the declassified information about the obviously Clinton Hoax, Obama Coup, Trump-Russia collusion, and it is making it understandable for people, because that's not behind us either, by the way, folks. All these things that have happened are leading to the Charlie Kirk assassination. There's been no accountability whatsoever. A coup happened in 2016 in December, when Obama, and it was an Obama coup actually, but there's some bombshells and other things that people haven't even pondered or thought about. But that people need to hold that in their soul as well, because that's one of the worst crimes that's happened in this country. It's our nation's history. So I think it's important people understand what happened.
All right. Drew Allen, actor, podcaster, author, and vice president of Publius Public Relations. I want to thank you so much for jumping on the program tonight, sharing your thoughts, and you're welcome back anytime.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care. All right. That was, again, Drew Allen. He's the vice president of Publius Public Relations, and actually did some work with Charlie Kirk. This is something that has touched an awful lot of people. And last was it Friday? There was a candlelight vigil on the steps of the Concord, New Hampshire State House. It was really kind of a very impromptu rally. I'd say probably 400 people at least attended that rally, and largely peaceful. There are a number of rallies that are going to be coming up, candlelight vigils and remembrance ceremonies. One is going to be held in Keene. Another one's going to be held at UNH.
One's tomorrow.
And this is another one coming up on Saturday, the 27th at the State House. And I think that the more exposure that these types of events get, the more it gives the left an opportunity to gather and to come out in numbers and try to be disruptive. And, here's the bottom line. I'm going to say two things, and this may not necessarily be popular. But if you are in New Hampshire, I highly recommend that you get on your little computer and you look up New Hampshire RSA 627:4, paragraph 1. And that is the statute for justification of force. And force may be used when a person reasonably believes that they are facing the unlawful use of force against them or somebody else. If you are at one of these rallies and somebody decides to physically accost you, you do what you do to bullies, and you knock them out. And send a message that this kind of behavior is not going to be tolerated. And yes, that may not necessarily be because we're supposed to take the high road. Ladies and gentlemen, the high road has gotten you where you are today. Sticking your head in the sand and thinking that you're just going to will this away or wish this away or pray this away is not going to solve the problem. And it's not going to send a decisive message to these people that this type of behavior will not be accepted. Because the left is going to continue to do what the left does. We understand this. We've seen this since the Clinton era. We certainly saw this during the 8 years of Obama. We saw this in full force during the first Trump administration. We saw this during the weaponization of law during the Biden administration. And we're certainly seeing this here today. Now, I played for you earlier Pastor Howard John Wesley, and I'll put that word pastor. This is no man of God. No man of God. This person talks about, and by the way, he invokes, you didn't hear it when Melissa Hortman was killed. If you don't remember, Melissa Hortman was the Minnesota state rep that was killed back in June. And whether or not that was politically motivated, as of right now, investigators are believing that this was a politically motivated, politically targeted attack. How many instances and acts of violence have been perpetrated and committed by people on the left? How many acts of violence have been perpetrated by people who are decidedly conservative Christian? Now, there's a disparity there because the number of leftists engaging in violent behavior and violent rhetoric and supporting the violent actions and the violent rhetoric are significantly higher than anything that you're seeing coming out of the right. As a law enforcement high liability trainer, I love it when people come up and tell me that law enforcement shoots and kills 20,000 black men every year.
Yeah, I have not seen any data to support that.
Over the past 25 years, the highest number of deaths that can be attributed by law enforcement shooting and killing subjects, 2023, was the year, and it was approximately 1,240. So the average, the statistical average, 1,000 people per year are killed, shot and killed by law enforcement officers. What does this have to do with it? I'll tell you exactly what it has to do with it. Every single year, between 250 and 400,000 people are killed as a result of medical error and medical malpractice. When's the last time you heard politicians standing up demanding accountability in the medical industry? And I'm not talking about deaths attributed to, adverse reactions from vaccines. I'm talking about doctors who go in a surgery and kill a patient. 250 to 400,000 people every single year die because of accidents and mistakes made by physicians. Nary a peep. How many times do you hear politicians standing up to defund the police and disband the police and creating a narrative, at least within the narrative, that significantly inflates the actual number of people that are shot and killed by police every year? 225,000 to 400,000 people? Nary a peep. 1,000 people? We've got to change an entire industry. We have to disband. We have to defund. We have to take away. We have to slam. We have to villainize. We have to demonize. And we have to hurl pejoratives at these people. There's always a disconnect. And I've said this to you more times than I care to count. When a leftist, when a Democrat, when a progressive makes an accusation about people on the other side, ladies and gentlemen, you can take it to the bank. It is a twisted, projected confession. All right, we have an old friend who's on the program, I do believe. Is he audio or video? Audio. Okay, perfect. Darvio Morrow. Darvio, I'm going to let you introduce yourself because you're going to do a better job than I can. I met you and by the way, I'm supposed to be a racist white conservative. Darvio, you're black. And you have one of the best relationships from the media standpoint that I've had with anybody. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program, sir. How you been?
How's it going, Darvio?
Do we have Darvio? Okay. Well, I don't have him in my headphones. Okay. Well, we will work diligently to get Darvio back. Darvio and I actually had a conversation on Thursday about this, and it was very interesting. We talked about the dehumanization campaigns, and we talked about the basically Charlie Kirk's trivium, that his messaging, that his rhetoric and his logic were so spot on that it represented that existential threat to the left. That his rhetoric was so powerful that he literally changed the hearts and minds of tens of thousands of people who should have been solidly in the Harris Waltz camp.
I actually owe Darvio a phone call because I've been meaning to contact him about this. We met each other through Spaces online. Actually, one of the things that I believe we connected on was one of my critiques of Charlie Kirk's rhetorical responses, which I don't take, and it was regarding the issue of race, which is why I take issue with the idea that Charlie Kirk is racist. I don't believe he is racist. I've met him multiple times at CPAC, AmFest, other events in DC, what have you, throughout my campaign and other campaigns and multiple election cycles. And the way he interacted with me, I saw nothing, and I challenged him. You know me. I have no problem saying anything to anybody. Mm-hmm. And I challenged him, and he didn't come at, like a good Christian, he didn't come at me with animus. He didn't take any jabs. We had a respectful conversation, and it was largely rhetorically and strategic-wise. And my whole thing was largely, I always saw an opportunity with the conservative movement when it came to approaching black men on conservative principles of governance, because that's what we should be proposing as solutions to the death, poverty, and destruction of the left. And he agreed that there was that opportunity there. And I was like, all right, so why are we failing to make this and wrote. He goes, honestly, I don't know. I go, here's the reason why. Unlike in any other industry, Donald Trump is a perfect example of this. For decades, we had gone directly to people, normal people, without intermediaries with our message or what we propose as solutions. With the black community, we go to grifters and we go to influencers to be our message board. Here's the problem, though. When you go through the influencer class, what is their main focus? It's not the movement. It's not tangibles. It's not winning elections. It's not voter registration or anything like that. It is clicks, likes, retweets, subscribership. Mm-hmm. It is money. It's fame. That means that you can say whatever the hell you want, and as long as people click to watch it, good or for better or worse, you're being successful. But here's the problem with that. Are you building a relationship with the people? Like if I were Ford and I wanted to sell you a truck, what am I going to propose? This is how my Ford is going to solve the issues in your life. You need to get your kids to and from soccer practice. You own a ranch. You need to be able to pick stuff up, take it back to your ranch, get things done, pick up feed, whatever. I'm going to propose how that Ford is going to solve the problems in your life. I'm not talking about the brand Ford. I'm talking about solutions, problem, solutions. Now here's my pitch, buy a Ford. Well, we don't do that with the black community. And my proposal to Charlie Kirk is a lot of the rhetoric that we have is focused on arguing with the influencers on the left, black Marxists and white Marxists, rather than talking to black voters about the issues they have. Because when I talk to black voters all throughout the country, you know, I find the exact same shit we complain about in our communities: education, police, crime, friggin' cost of living, being able to afford groceries, gas in our cars, food on our tables, energy prices, stuff like that. I find the exact same thing in black communities. So my thing was, why is it I find a 90% overlap between issues when I talk to just regular people, but when all of a sudden you get up to the influencer class and you get to the debates we have, they're heavily ideological and they leave 90% of us out of the conversation. And we're sitting here going, why the fuck are we having this conversation right now? Mm-hmm. And my thing to Charlie Kirk is stop focusing on arguing with the asshole on the left and focus on messaging to the people on the ground the same way you are with young men in colleges, with young people who need a better option to the death, poverty, and destruction of progressivism.
Darvio Morrow, host of the Outlaws radio program and head of the First Class Broadcasting Corporation. You can check him out at fcbpodcast.com. Darvio, how the hell are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I wanted to get you on because I wanted to continue the conversation that we were having as I was driving around the bowels of Indianapolis. I can't say that. It was actually kind of nice out there. But
you lie.
No, we actually had a really good conversation, Darvio, and I think that was kind of one of those conversations that was organic and spontaneous, and I really wish we could have gotten that on the air because I mean, you know, we spoke, and I think the shock for you, certainly for me, certainly was still very visceral and very tangible, and it's kind of like, all right, so where do we go from here, and what do we do at this point in time? What have you seen and heard since we last spoke on Thursday?
Yeah, you know, it's been a whirlwind. I mean, for me personally, a lot of the things that Julian just articulated, I had similar critiques concerning Charlie Kirk as well. But like I told you on the phone, the thing that disturbed me the most is that this is a guy who's just talking, and he got shot for talking. Now, whether you agree with what he had to say or not, to me, is irrelevant. It doesn't mean that this person should get a bullet. And I think I don't remember if I went into detail with you about this story that I'm about to tell on your show, but what kind of put it in perspective for me that kind of knocked away a lot of the rhetoric. And again, I understand, like, words matter, rhetoric matters. I get all that. But I got a phone call maybe about a month ago from a friend of mine who's a progressive, but they're a good, decent person. They're a personal friend of mine. And they called me distraught in tears because someone who they thought was a friend just lambasted them for being friends with me.
Mm-hmm.
I've never met this person. No, I don't know who this person is. And their biggest critique, their criticisms of me, the reason why they hate me so much is because I identify as an evangelical Christian and my bachelor's degree came from Liberty University. So putting that in perspective for me, it was like, look, my rhetoric, I'm probably pretty much as close to the middle of the road as you're going to get from a political commentator, and people still hate me too, right? So I can't look at, oh, well, it was the rhetoric and people trying to say, oh, well, he reaped what he sowed. How words don't sow bullets. No. And so for me, that was why this whole thing was put into a whirlwind for me, because that could be any of us, regardless of whether you use the same rhetoric as Charlie Kirk or not, whether you agree with Charlie Kirk or not. Anybody, I've gotten death threats. I'm sure everybody in your studio has got a death threat before. That could have been any of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think
from both the right and the left, and I lost a friend that I served with. A guy would have taken a bullet for, told me he hopes I die, I lose my house, and my family ends up destitute.
The types of things and the type of rhetoric that the left outwardly verbalizes, and you'll notice, I mean, in my rant earlier, I'm not saying go out and proactively engage in violence. What I'm saying is stand your ground and know what the law says about self-defense. And if somebody gets in your space and physically accosts you, that's when you knock them out.
Yeah.
You use what is legally permissible and legally justifiable to stand your ground and say no, whether it's property destruction, whether it's assaults, whether it's a battery, whether it's anything. This is not acceptable behavior. And I think the most discouraging thing, Darvio, was the fact that Charlie Kirk was not responsible for policy. He was not a politician. He was not in elected office. He was not responsible for voting. He was not responsible for doing anything other than going to college campuses and changing and winning the hearts and minds of kids that had been steeped and raised in rhetoric from the progressive left. And he was successful at using his trivium to do that. And that's why he got silenced, which to me establishes clear as day that the left is not interested in dialogue. They're not interested in debate. They're not interested in having their ideas challenged, nor are they interested in challenging your ideas. They want you dead. And we've heard that time and time again. Whether you say that, well, you know, that's just really trying to extrapolate a violent meaning from the rhetoric out of the left, or whether or not you take their words at face value. But again, from an investigator's perspective, totality of the circumstances, these people want you dead. If you believe in traditional family values, they want you dead. If you believe in God, if you are washed in the blood of Christ and you are a saved Christian, they want you dead. If you refuse to accept the validity in giving chemical cocktails to children and performing Frankenstein-esque surgeries to remove genitalia from prepubescent kids, they want you dead. If you believe that an adult man should not be in a physical relationship with a child under the auspices of minor attracted person, but instead belong in prison, they want you dead.
I think the most dangerous part, I think the thing that made Charlie Kirk so powerful is I've watched Charlie Kirk throughout multiple debates throughout his entire career sit across from people who vehemently disagree with him, despise his entire existence, and he is nothing but even-toned and respectful, no matter the dialogue, no matter the subject, no matter who he's sitting across from, and no matter what they say. And that's dangerous. That's one of those words are more powerful than the pen is mightier than the sword. There are some words of truth there are some words of truth that can change things. They last the test of time. Martin Luther King's words last the test of time. Charlie Kirk's words, I think, are going to last the test of time.
I would hope so. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to Keith's point, like that was one of the things that was jarring to me, and we talked about that too. Like and I'm not saying like political violence is bad, period, like whether you're an elected official or not, but we've seen that throughout the course of history in this country with elected officials and things like that. But Charlie Kirk was not a policymaker. Charlie Kirk was not an elected official. He was an organizer and a commentator. And so to me, that's what really brought it home. Like, it's the issue at hand is, regardless of whether you agree with him or not, you should have the right to say what you think without getting a bullet in response. I don't want to live in a country like that's some third world stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like that's disturbing to me.
Juan, can you play that clip of Bill Maher from my podcast earlier? Because I think this is something, there are those on the left who have gotten so sick. Bill Maher probably doesn't agree with me and Keith or you, Darvio, on, I'd say, probably 90% of things, but he's a free speech absolutist. And J.K. Rowling, a free speech absolutist, has also taken this position of calling out the left and going, I want no part of you guys at this point. You have completely bastardized everything that this liberal movement was supposed to be. You're not liberal anymore. You don't care about respectful dialogue. You don't care about discussion. You don't care about getting down to solutions or the rights of people who you disagree with. You're completely happy with trampling on the rights of everyone you disagree with, or even stifling out their existence, as long as you feel self-righteous in doing so.
We had, and Darby, I don't know if if the name Daryl Lamont Jenkins means anything to you. He's a social justice advocate, social justice warrior. We'll just call him what he is. Out of Maryland, I believe. He was featured in a 2018 Netflix documentary called Alt-Right, the Age of Rage. And we have an audio clip of him talking about, and he encapsulates the concept of social justice and specifically political correctness, I think, very well. I don't know if Juan has the Bill Maher one up. Do you have the Daryl Lamont Jenkins one that you can play? Darby, I want you to listen to this real quick in the context of what you were just talking about here. This is Daryl Lamont Jenkins again.
Hate speech is protected under the First Amendment, but that doesn't mean it's protected by ethics. It just simply means that they don't go to jail for it. But if what you say does cause some sort of harm, people are allowed to respond.
If what you say does cause some sort of harm. Now, again, words have meaning here, okay? Injury is a physical condition resulting from something that happens to the body. Harm is emotional. Mm-hmm. And that's very important for those of you who are in the military. Are you hurt or are you injured? If you're hurt, rub some dirt in your feelings, get back up and get into the fight. If you're injured, we'll get you medical care for your injury. Okay, so that's that. So if somebody is harmed by what you say, we're not talking about physical. We're not talking about physical ailments. We're talking about emotional stress. The exact same thing that people right now in Great Britain are being arrested for. They're being arrested because something that they put on social media caused somebody anxiety. And they're literally being incarcerated for that. But this I think encapsulates this concept of political correctness perfectly. That, well, if somebody gets injured as a result of somebody else's behavior, well, then, there's a law and you can go to jail for that. But if somebody's feelings are hurt, well, then that's where the role of the social justice warrior comes in. They identify the abhorrent or venomous behavior, and then they launch a public relations campaign. And of course, that's where the court of public opinion comes in. And the court of public opinion, unlike the court of law, does not involve, respect, or even recognize the concept of due process. You don't get to face your accuser. Oftentimes, your accuser is anonymous. They like it that way. Mm-hmm. That there is no trial. There is no beyond a reasonable doubt. There isn't even a preponderance of the evidence. When the charges are laid, you are found guilty, and the sentencing phase commences immediately. Oftentimes, the sentencing phase commences the moment that the offense, objectively or subjectively, I should say, is recognized. And this is the game that the left has been playing. We don't like it, so therefore it must be condemned. But if somebody dares to point the finger at the left and say, what about your abhorrent behavior? What about your immoral, unethical, godless, illegal behavior? Oh, well, you're simply taking us out of context, and now you're victimizing us and you're hurting our feelings.
Can I propose a question to you and Darvio? Because me and Darvio have had this conversation before.
Please.
And I've long, sort of wrestled with this. The Stoics, while they didn't engage in wanting violence against each other, they did not tolerate disrespect either. Jordan Peterson, one of the things that made him the most famous on the right was his presupposition that undergirding every interaction between men is the possibility that it will devolve to violence should proper respect not be given. The idea that while you have the right to say whatever you want to say, you should also possess the wisdom to understand that certain things that you say in certain contexts or situations are likely to elicit a specific response. And this is why I said the prospect of the the libertarians call it the non-aggression principle. Mm-hmm. The prospect of non-aggression principle. If a reasonable and prudent person would expect a specific statement or action to elicit a violent response, and you still engage in that action or statement, did I bring wanting violence against you, or did you ask for it? Did I do what you asked for?
Let's do this. Let's take a very, very quick break. The only break of the show this week, by the way, too, because this has been, I think, an important topic, and we decided to forego some of the breaks. Darvio, can you stick around with us for the next segment?
Yes, sir.
All right, very good. All right, so much more with Darvio, and we're going to get to that question when Granite State Live continues. And +2, phone lines are open, 833-603-8255, if you would like to let your voice be heard. Again, 833-603-TALK. Much more coming up right after this. Don't go away.
This is the new and full version of Legacy, the song I wrote for Charlie Kirk. I really hope you guys like it. My heart breaks for his little girl, knowing that daddy ain't coming home. What kind of world we living in? One where killing a father is condoned. He never failed to speak the truth, no matter the war he was up against. He saw this country falling apart, so he picked up his cross and took a chance. I believe this world is falling apart, and all we have to cling to is in our hearts. I'm talking about Jesus, not the left's careless apathy. One man's life was taken away for helping generations pave the way. It's our responsibility to carry on your legacy. What's this mean for that little boy? He lost a man to look up to. No more stories at bedtime, just a world he'll grow a victim to. I wonder if they thought about his wife, whether or not she'll smile again. Losing him will test our faith, but strong in our faith is where we stand. I believe this world is falling apart, and all we have to cling to is in our hearts. Now I'm talking about Jesus, not the left's careless apathy. One man's life is taken away for helping generations pave the way. It's our responsibility to carry on your legacy. Please like and share. Say your prayers for him and his family. His family needs you more than ever right now. Thank you all so much.
United We Stand. A Marine's Fight, written by Marine Corps veteran Julian. This book examines the deepening fractures in our nation, political division, government overreach, and a fading sense of shared responsibility, and offers a battle-tested path forward. A Marine's fight is a bold and urgent call to action for every American who believes in the founding ideals of our republic. United we stand. A Marine's fight can be purchased on Amazon.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for GraniteGrok, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Yeah, I know, but just look at that. It's so sad. It's good. Here, put that over there.
Ding dong, the witch is dead. To everyone saying that it was such a senseless, violent act. I want you to remind yourself that it was God's plan. I mean, really, it was actually his fault because, like, he should have been wearing, like, a bulletproof neck brace or something. Like, I cannot believe he walked out the house without it. I mean, really, you have to be aware of what you're wearing in public so that, like, people don't target you. And you don't become a victim. So I guess this is just another example of God's plan in action. It was not a senseless act of violence. This was God's plan. Happy hump day, y'all.
Oh my God. I can't freaking stand these people. I can't stand these people on a whole nother freaking level. The level of absolute hatred in their freaking hearts.
That was evil. That was evil.
And you know what the worst part is? I've seen this more. The reaction from the women on the left has been so visceral and so disgusting. It almost makes me lose faith in women as a whole. Because it is just.
I'm gonna say it exactly the way that I said it before. The beautiful thing about the internet is that it gives every asshole with an opinion a voice.
Yeah.
The horrible thing about the internet is that it gives every white trash whore with an opinion a voice. And you know what comes around goes around. Listen, again, my idea here, and again, I'm not the thought police. Mm-hmm. You want to say things. I mean, as inflammatory as that is. Okay, fine. Yeah. You show your intellect and you show your maturity by putting something like that out.
Yep.
I hope and I pray that you never, ever, ever have to experience the pain of having somebody that you love violently murdered. I hope and I pray that you experience the pain of having somebody that you love violently murdered. I do. Because, again, it's an eye for an eye. And I am in no way, shape, or form advocating for pussy pacificity. No. We have to meet force with force. That does not mean go out and proactively engage in any type of violence. But if somebody is threatening you, if somebody assaults you, if somebody violates your rights, then you do, and you have to understand what the law will permit in your respective state. Again, here in New Hampshire, we have a beautiful set of laws under Chapter 627, :4, Section 1, nonviolent force, or I'm sorry, non-deadly force, excuse me. And then getting into 627(4), paragraph 3, which is the stand your ground laws. Mm-hmm. If you look at those, it is when a person believes that he or she is facing an unlawful imminent use of force, they may use a proportionate level of force to defend themselves. It does not say only in the event that your attacker is X or Y or Z. It doesn't matter what form the threat comes in. What matters is the fact that you are facing a threat and you deal with that. So, I mean, again, as inflammatory as it is, and here's the thing. Why are people doing that? People are doing that because they're desperate for attention. You talked about the internet clickbait. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say as much inflammatory, stupid, asinine, brain-dead, insensitive rhetoric that I possibly can. Why? Because I'm going to go viral. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that whore was created by the internet. Because that whore wants what the internet is providing her, which is fame. She wants to be famous. The same thing as that degenerate Hawk Tua. Oh, spit on it. Yeah, that's what we've degenerated to in our society.
And here's the problem with that. The internet rewards it, right? So even though she's going to be infamous, because the vast majority of people
she's not going to be. The only thing she's going to be infamous for is sucking dick in a truck stop parking lot for crack money and money for tattoos. That's it.
Yeah, point still made. She'll be infamous, but it doesn't matter because she'll get the clicks, she'll get the likes, and the clicks and the likes are going to be enough. When she sees that single clip went to 1 million freaking people, she's going to still feel validated. Yeah. That's the problem. We live in a society of unfettered validation and affirmation, where people turn to the internet to do what your family should have done. Her family probably should have whooped her ass a few times. But nobody gets fucking spankings anymore.
No, because what'll happen? Because the leftist progressives will call Child Protective Services on you.
Maybe we need to knock you the fuck out, police. Because that's what I'm thinking is we have a whole society full of people who never got ass whoopings as a kid. Your parents didn't teach you the red line, so maybe I got to teach you the red line. Maybe you got to get a right cross to the face in order to learn when to shut the hell up.
You know, a shattered orbital does a wonder for people's bad attitude. It's again,
But at the same time, I also sort of adhere to the Dr. King rule. There's not a whole lot you could say to me. Like, you could call me any racial epithet. I've been spit on. I've been spit on. I've had death threats. I've had people said horrible shit to me, and I've not responded with violence. I will say, though, you say some horrible shit about my wife in front of me, I will put you in a pine box 12 feet deep. You smack my wife's ass, I'm going to kill you.
Well, I mean, again.
Or say something about my mama, it's gloves off.
I mean, even to be honest with you, I mean, short of defending your wife's honor, I mean, listen, you ever work in law enforcement?
Yeah.
Dude, you wouldn't believe the things that people would say about your mother. And it's like it's nothing personal. You don't know my mother, you don't know my family. You're never going to know my family. You're never going to be invited over for Thanksgiving dinner, so don't worry about it. I could care less. Words are words.
Yeah.
Okay? You asked me a question earlier. If you walk into a room and you say inflammatory things and then I bite and I engage in violence against you, what was the question? Did I...
So...
I forget exactly how you worded it.
So but if you were to say something or do something and you know the highly likely response, the most likely response is going to be violence, and you still engage in that statement or action, did I bring unwanted violence against you, or did I give you exactly what you asked for?
Well, let's ask Darvio. Darvio, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think it depends on what's being said. I mean, if you are, we know, like, there'll be conversations where it seems like it's elevating to a point where it's moving from the verbal to possibly the physical. If you feel threatened, that's a different conversation. I think that, to me, I separate that from people having their feelings hurt because they don't like something that someone said. I think you don't have a right to not be offended.
Yeah.
But
Now,
if it escalates to the point.
And that's where the difference between harm and injury comes in.
Yes.
Okay, you can say what you want to. You're not going to push me or provoke me to the point where your words are going to cause me to physically accost you in any way. However, the moment that you touch me, The moment that you put hands on me is the moment that we hold court right then and there. And I will tell you this, not only am I skilled in, but I also teach extreme violence to people who violence is their way of life. And I'm talking about professional gun carriers, law enforcement. These are people who, again, they don't respond to anything other than behavior. So I think this is important. Listen, let people say what they want to say. Somebody wants to walk by and say something, let them say it. Who cares? They're showing their true colors. They're showing their emotional and intellectual maturity by choosing to behave that way. But if it involves property damage or if it involves physical assault, that crosses a line that cannot be tolerated. And again, to react violently to somebody's words is to turn around and hypocritically attack the actions of the shooter in the Charlie Kirk situation.
Yep.
Okay? Listen, you don't like it? Tough shit. Go home and cry yourself to sleep on your Elizabeth Warren pillow. Go to therapy. Whatever. Seek out a chemical medical interdiction. Whatever you need to do. But it doesn't mean that you can resort to violence. But the moment that you do resort to violence, then you had better expect it. Yep. Archilochus, 650 BC. I have a high art. I hurt with extreme cruelty those who would wound me. That should be your motto. I will hurt with extreme cruelty those who would wound me. Say what you want to say. Words are words. But the moment it becomes physical, that's when things change. I'll leave it at that.
Well, and I think, too, you have the right to respond to words, but respond with words, not bullets.
Of course.
Now, as you just said, when things escalate to a different level, that requires a different response. But I think there are too many people who don't understand that you don't have a right to not be offended.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what people are missing. This is what people aren't understanding. That was the thing that bothered me so much about what happened. I have criticized things that Charlie Kirk has said repeatedly, and never once, not one time ever did I ever sit and think, oh, I want to see this guy dead. Like, who does that? Who thinks like that? Like that is utterly demonic. And that video that you played coming out of break, man, I'm dumbfounded. I don't get it. I don't get it.
We've entered a world, we've entered a moment in society where there is this level of moral subjectivism where anything goes as long as it makes you feel good in the moment, which is why I continue to harp down on the whole validation and affirmation thing, this matriarchal society. And here's where I go with this. This matriarchal society we've attempted to move into in third and fourth wave radical feminism is this idea that the way women emote and view the world is the way that society should operate. Not that we should operate from the point of a patriarchal society where we have a duty, a responsibility to interact with each other in a certain manner, regardless of how we think, regardless of what we think, and regardless of whether or not we like each other. That if you feel a certain way at any given point in time, it gives you carte blanche to do whatever the hell you want. Government be damned, society be damned, family be damned, so, like everything be damned. And that woman, that whore that was on the screen is a perfect example of that. That there is the moral subjectivism, the idea that because I feel a certain way, I can destroy society and expect society to bend the knee to my whims.
See, and I go back to what I said before, which is, again, the best thing about the internet is that it gives everybody with an opinion a voice. The worst thing about the internet is that it gives everybody with an opinion a voice. But the other problem, too, is that it allows people to do it anonymously. Mm-hmm. And I go back to what I said previously, which was there was a day, if you would go up and insult somebody, you ran the risk of getting punched in the mouth.
Yep.
And now with the anonymity of the internet, you can say some of the most unbelievably disgusting, hate-filled, vitriolic things, and there are no consequences for that. And that's the problem. Number one, no consequences. Number two, the passive acceptance of leftist and progressive victimization that we see coming out of mainstream Americans, and including people, as far right as you want to go. And again, what we talked about this, Darvio, last week. What is the biggest issue when it comes to Christians and conservatives and Republicans? A respect for life, a respect for law and order, a respect for the rules. We don't want to break the rules. We don't want to violate the sanctity of life. We don't like necessarily violence because, as we were told by our first grade teachers, violence doesn't solve things. Sometimes violence is what solves things. And again, I'm not, and in no way, somebody will selectively take that clip and, there's Hanson advocating for violence. Nope, not advocating for violence whatsoever. I am advocating for self-defense. If somebody violates your physical safety, then you do what you have to do. Period. End of story.
Darvio, I'm going to read you something. And I think you'll find it interesting. This is from one of our House leadership and Republican leadership in the state, Jason Osborne. And I quote, "Already, voices in the political establishment are calling for America to, quote, turn down the temperature. On the surface, such pleas for civility may sound noble, but in the face of barbarism, they ring hollow. The truth is that the temperature must not be lowered, but raised, not in violence or destruction, but in moral clarity, in conviction strong enough to expose and consume corruption at its core. We cannot negotiate with evil. We cannot appease it, whether it comes cloaked in radical Islamism or broad or in homegrown extremism that dehumanizes conservatives as enemies to be assassinated. It must be confronted head on. To turn down the temperature now would be to let evil grow in the shadows. The only path forward is exposure, accountability, and courage."
Exposure, accountability, and courage. Sounds like a good starting position. Darvio Morrow, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the program tonight. And again, just remind, I just clicked off of it, so I don't have it here. The link to your podcast.
Yeah, you can follow me at Dita Kingpin on all social media platforms. Go to fcbpodcast.com or theoutlawsradio.com. Thanks, y'all. I appreciate it.
All right, Darvio, thank you. God bless, and be safe out there. All right, that is going to do it for this Tuesday night edition of Granite State Live. I want to thank all of our guests tonight for joining us. And again, your thoughts. Love to hear from you. GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. That's GraniteStateLive@gmail.com. We will be back next week to do it all over again. Until then, folks, stay safe, be well. And yes, despite everything, try to be nice to one another, please. Unless somebody violates your physical safety, then knock them the fuck out. Have a great week, everybody.